Hello everyone. First of all, thank you so much for taking time to watch this video. This is in continuation with the work that I've been doing related to my book on influencer marketing with webinars. And today we'll be talking about selecting webinar format and topics. I have created a couple of videos in the past which talks about different webinar topics and different format and why is it important, and what factors do you need to consider, what pitfalls to avoid, among others. But the question is, how do you select a webinar topic? Now that so many options are there. There's formal, there are informal, there are structured, there are unstructured. So how do you create a format that is relevant for the audience? So there are a couple of questions that you need to ask yourself, and these are very straightforward questions, and that would kind of help you decide what webinar topic is apt for the audience that you have selected. And the first question is no brainer. You have to look at your webinar objective. What are you trying to achieve out of this webinar objective? Based on your webinar objective, you can decide what kind of format you need. If you are creating a thought leadership webinar, then maybe a freewheeling conversation is better, based on a topic. Similarly, if you have a product demo, then maybe a structured is better. Maybe so it really depends on the webinar objective, whether you want to use your webinar for thought leadership or for sales. The second one is to look at who is your audience, right? So there are, based on your audience profile, they might have certain preference. So for example, marketers approach a problem slightly different than engineers, right? So there are people who like a very structured, listed, formal input. For them, you want to follow a specific path. Then there are people who are don't require really very structured, very formal, and they kind of flourish when there is little chaos, and when it's little unstructured, when it's a freewheeling conversation. So figure out who is your audience, and what your webinar audience would want. And if you can just ask that questions, right, whether your audience would want a formal, structured, or informal, unstructured, or or whether your audience would want a freewheeling conversation against a formal. If you can just ask that question to yourself, you will have much more clarity to figure out what kind of webinar format do you want. And the next question on this list is to look at what's your post webinar conversion strategy. See, you cannot have a very formal conversion strategy if your webinar was a freewheeling conversation. If your webinar was more about if the messaging is different to your webinar strategy and to your actual webinar. So if you can just look at these various aspects, it would help you with selecting your webinar format. Look at your audience, look at your objective, just ask what would make more sense for my webinar audience, for this topic. Would they require a structured, or would they require a freewheeling conversation? And that can just help you with more clarity and selecting your webinar format. I hope you found these helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.